everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am Taylor Rockwell, hosting today. Daryl Grove is not with me in the office right now, but he will be on the show later on. I called him to discuss CONMEBOL's reaction to U.S. Soccer's offer of maybe having the Copa America in 2020 here in the United States. We also do some updates to the TSS Scouting Network, and we talk about Daryl's health situation, updates there with what happened today. Nothing bad, don't worry, that makes it sound ominous. Just updates because he wants listeners to be aware because they have been so wonderful and so supportive. So we'll get to Daryl later on the show. Right now, I'm going to talk to Matt Doyle of MLSsoccer.com. You know Matt Doyle. He doesn't need an introduction, but he does need to be on the show as often as possible because he has all that good MLS knowledge. He is I think is appearing on the heels of completing his magnum opus for the 2019 season, his preview document that covers every single team, gives fans reasons for optimism, and then maybe a few reasons for concern, just a few here and there. But it's a great article. I suggest you read it. But Matt and I go over as many of the teams as we could in that article in the time allotted. But Matt, as always, is a great guest, and we very much appreciate what he brings to the show. So with that in mind, I'll just say, with me now, I've got Mr. Matt Doyle. Matt, thank you for making your triumphant return to the Total Soccer Show. I'm assuming it's triumphant.
Yeah, it feels triumphant, doesn't it? I think we're off to a good start.
I think we are. I think it should feel triumphant. I know you've been a little busy. That's probably an understatement. I do like to think that like you all have just been kept in the same room until all of the previews are done. But I imagine that means that there would be at least one fatality, so maybe that hasn't been the case.
Yeah, we are allowed to come and go in supervised 15-minute bursts. Just take a walk around the block, but then it's back into the studio for the rest of the filming.
So is this like a time that you look forward to, or for you personally, is it a time when you're just sort of working like 20-hour days?
Oh, I look forward to it because I'm stupid and have the memory of a goldfish, and I forget that it's 20-hour days for 3 straight weeks, and I am completely exhausted by the end. Before the season even starts, I'm completely exhausted. So. Good.
All right. Well, I'm glad we've got you in a maybe, hopefully not completely exhausted, maybe just semi-exhausted. We'll take that.
Yeah, semi-exhausted is. No, completely exhausted, man. Completely exhausted. I'm liable to say something and get us both in trouble, so let's do this.
All right, well, the only person I could get in trouble with is Daryl, and I think he'll be okay with it. We'll see, though. But yeah, I do want to get to it because you wrote a few words to preview the start of the season, and I wanted to start where you started with the Red Bulls. Do you really think there's a chance they're better without Tyler Adams? Because that kind of blew my mind when I saw you wrote that.
I mean, there's a chance they'll be more flexible, but no, they're not going to be a better team because they don't have Tyler Adams. They might end up, because this is a team game, right? They might end up being a more flexible team, and there is a world in which, or a reality in which they get 72 points instead of 71. And we saw some of that last year. Remember, they killed Atlanta at the end of September, I think it was, without Adams or BWP. So They've made a living the last 4 or 5 years of replacing what looked to be key cogs. And Adams is amazing, and we should all, any U.S. soccer fan should enjoy what he's doing in the Bundesliga and hopefully with the national team. But I don't think this is a crisis for the Red Bulls.
It seems like you especially don't think that because it sounds like you're pretty up on, is it Christian Caceres Jr.? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, right now it looks like Mark Czajkowski is going to be starting, at least for the CCL games, and I think we'll get our first look at Caceres of the year probably on Saturday against Columbus because they're going to rotate the squad. But from what I saw of him last year, half dozen USL games, and I think he played about 100 MLS minutes. Kid's good. Kid's very, very good. And it shouldn't shock anyone if he plays 2 years in New York and then they sell him, for $5 million to somebody in the Bundesliga or England or La Liga, because that's what the Red Bulls do now. And am obviously very bullish on that approach to running an MLS franchise. And I guess, boy, I really didn't mean to make a pun there, but I guess I frickin' did.
I mean, that's all right. Daryl will appreciate that. He always likes puns on the show, so I think we'll let it slide. I want to stay in New York for a moment, though, because maybe I was overanalyzing, but I feel like I was reading between the lines in some of the stuff you were writing and listening to all the podcasts you all put out, which were excellent. Do you feel that Dom Torrent lasts the season? Dome Torrent, excuse me.
I think he'll get the season. Mm-hmm. I think it would be unfair if he didn't. In general, you need about a year and a half, 2 years to really know what a manager is made of. And while there's been some turnover in this squad, it's not the squad he picked. But anyone who's impressed by how the team played under Dome last year is they're believing their own BS. Mm-hmm. So I think he's a guy with a lot to prove for sure.
And how do you think he'll go about doing that? Because obviously losing Yangel Herrera, losing David Villa, Keaton Parks comes in, Mitrita comes in, but I'm not sure, and I'm wondering where you are on this one, if Mitrita ends up being that central striker for them or if they go out and try to find somebody else. I know they were briefly in for Ola Kamara. That didn't seem to work, so I'm wondering what you think they need, or do you think they're about set for the start of the season?
I think they're going to go out and look for a number 9. Because if you look at the way they played in preseason, it was a pretty straightforward 4-2-3-1. Mitrita was playing on the left wing, and there was some switching with him and Jonathan Lewis, who's playing as kind of a through the lines center forward. But there was nothing, nothing brand new and earth shattering about this. It was a 4-2-3-1, and you could play that with a false 9 if you want, but you're probably better off going out and getting a really, really good striker. So I would expect to see them try to do that.
Is there anybody that you think would really work for them, or you would like to see them see, or is it just sort of we'll see how it develops over the course of the season?
I hadn't thought about it at all. I could see how Ola Kamara would have been a pretty good get for them, and they went after him relatively hard. I don't know how hard, but it feels like a wait and see kind of thing, because a lot of it depends on how good Mitrita is. He's quick and he's elusive and he tries stuff and he's got a really good shot on him, but he failed in Italy, mm-hmm. And that is a pretty useful data point to go on. So a lot of stuff is up in the air.
Well, I think you've set me up nicely here, because speaking of failing in Italy, let's talk Frank de Boer. We're recording this before CONCACAF Champions League tonight with Atlanta hosting Herediano, I think is how you pronounce that. They mm-hmm. lost 3-1 in Costa Rica, is the more important thing. If things don't go well this evening, do you think Atlanta fans should be concerned about the direction that Frank de Boer is taking the team?
No. I think it's too early for that. I mean, this is a guy who's experienced being fired after 5 games, and I don't think that that's a too useful a way to think about things. Let's put it this way: in the last 20 years, the last 2 decades, Frank de Boer has twice as many Eredivisie titles as all other managers at Ajax combined. Mm-hmm. That's pretty good.
I mean, it's not bad. It's okay.
Yeah. And the players that he had there were sold for tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in total. So I don't think they should be concerned that he's going to run this club into the ground. What they might have to get used to is that 2019 is not a banner defend our trophy year. Maybe it takes a year for Frank de Boer to get everything running the way he wants it to run. And at that point, you would say, given his years at Ajax and the amount that Atlanta invest into the club, that they'll probably be fine. I would be surprised if they weren't fine.
Maybe this one is like like maybe not your area since you're not a GM or an owner of an MLS franchise, but I am wondering, like, how do you think Atlanta fans, or even just people who watch Atlanta, how do you think they should sort of adjust their expectations for this team? Because it's one that's been, exciting goal scoring from the get-go. Tata Martino's there. It's all very exciting. Almiron and Martinez. Now we've got Frank de Boer in. It's going to be a little bit different. Like, how do you go about kind of looking at this Frank de Boer team, or how do you think people should, and how should they kind of change what their expectations are from what Atlanta was last season?
I'm not sure they should. It's going to look slightly different in terms of the tactics and the formation. I think they're going to be maybe a little bit more defensive in certain aspects. But that said, they were a very defensive team by the end of the year and into the playoffs. I think the bigger issue isn't Frank de Boer. I think the bigger issue is the lack of Miguel Almiron. Almiron is just a better overall player than anyone else in that midfield, and that includes Pity Martinez. So I think they're going to have to adjust to that, and they might have to. I guess the way to answer it honestly is like they might have a year of being uncomfortable with watching their team not score 5 goals every time some other team comes against them unprepared. But this is still, I would be shocked if they weren't one of the very best teams in MLS.
All right. I was like happily surprised to see, speaking of like the best teams in MLS, that it seems like you all have pretty high expectations for DC United, who are a team that's near and dear to my heart. Why do you think they will be so much better? Is it just the way the season ended last year, or is it the work they've done in the offseason as well?
I think it's a bit of both. I'd be more comfortable with it if they brought back Yamil Assad, who I think is undervalued. But the new guy that they got, Lucas Rodriguez, is supposed to be a better winger than Assad is. So if that works out, if they hit on that, and they have the right back from Boca Juniors, who O'Neal Fisher's pretty good, but the right back from Boca Juniors is an upgrade.
Yeah,
this is a team that showed that they have a top 5 in MLS gear, and they have this group together from the start. And obviously they're going to have to manage Rooney's minutes here and there, but I think this team should be really good.
So I wanted to stick with DC for a sec because I've seen a few people, mostly fans, I would say, or people who comment about DC United, talking about Ben Olsen, specifically that he costs them points every season. That seems to be a kind of a belief some folks have. I'll say for me, it did seem like he was a little bit overmatched against Columbus and Greg Berhalter in the playoffs. Where do you come down on Ben Olsen's effectiveness as a coach? What would you say are his strengths, and maybe what are some things he needs to improve?
I think his teams play hard, which is the number one job that a manager has. Like manager has to get the players to leave whatever gripes they got in the locker room and bring something close to their best with them out into the field. And I think Olsen's teams have always done that. And that's one. And two is he doesn't play guys out of position. I'm like, when you have players like Wayne Rooney and Lucho Acosta and Russell Canouse and on down the list, you're going to have a good performance 85% of the time if you just put the right guys in the right spot and say, go out there and have a good 90 minutes, boys. And I think he does those two things well. But he also, he has been, I wouldn't say he's a tactical master savant, but he seems to have a good feel for when to put out a team that can really get on the ball versus when to put out a team that is okay to absorb for 80 minutes and then try to win the game at the end. And we've seen him do a number on Atlanta United with that particular approach over the last 2 years.
You mentioned Russell Canouse there as well. I was thinking about the January camp, and I don't remember him getting any minutes. I know he was there. I don't think he got any minutes. Is there anything he needs to do to improve his national team candidacy, or do you think we're looking at a sort of oil and water situation when it comes to him and the national team under Greg Berhalter?
I think that what Berhalter wants from that number 6 role is a guy who gets on the ball and dictates the pace of the game and where on the field it's played. So for Russell Canouse, that means playing more, I call them zone moving passes. And I'm not just like the big diagonals to the overlapping fullback or the winger or anything, but I'm talking about like through the lines in central midfield. Break those lines, cut multiple defenders out of the play, get the ball onto your foot onto the foot of your playmaker in those pockets, in stride, on the right foot, with time to turn and do that sort of business. I think Knaus is actually pretty good at it. Bradley and Trapp right now are probably better, and I think that is why those two guys got all the minutes at D-mid.
Much more still to come from my conversation with Matt Doyle, but first I wanted to let you know about today's sponsor, Ruffneck Scarves. They are the official scarf provider of U.S. Soccer, of the USL, of the NCAA, and, very appropriately for this episode, Major League Soccer. I had not checked their MLS offerings in a while. I went and looked at them today. They have lots and lots of Major League Soccer scarves. They've got every team, many options for every team. It's a very impressive selection. For example, I'm scrolling through, I'm looking at the Chicago Fire. They've got Defire. That's one. I didn't do that very well. Let me try if I can do that one again, the superfan way. Defire. All right, that's the best I can do. I apologize to fans of old school SNL. But they've got like throwback scarves for different teams. They've got, say you're a Colorado fan, you're a little worried about this season. They've got a throwback scarf to when you were 2010 MLS champions. That is how many scarves they have for you. They've got the Total Soccer Show scarf. They've got the custom scarf option. If you don't like what they have and you want to make something yourself, you can do that. They make it that easy. They also make it easy to save money. If you go to ruffneckscarves.com and use the code TOTALSOCCERSHOW, you can get 20% off the items they have. That doesn't include the custom scarf option, but for everything else they've got, it's 20% off. So that's RUFFNECK scarves.com and use the code TOTALSOCCERSHOW, all one word, all together, all uppercase if it matters, for 20% off anything you see. Thank you, as always, to Ruffneck Scarves for sponsoring today's episode of the Total Soccer Show. Now back to my conversation with Matt Doyle. We've talked primarily about the Eastern Conference so far. I'm going to stick there for one more round of questions, and then we'll move over to the West Coast. Don't worry, West Coast listeners. But you mentioned Bradley. I am pretty down on Toronto from everything I've seen. I was down on them in our preview. What do you think is the best case scenario for Toronto? And is there a chance that we see, if it doesn't go the best case route, do you think there's a chance that Greg Vanney is on the hot seat?
I think if they have a second straight year missing the playoffs, he's absolutely on the hot seat. I mean, don't forget that he's got a new GM in there, and Ali Curtis and Greg Vanney go back, and maybe they're best of friends already, but maybe not. And maybe not even maybe. We know for a fact that most GMs or technical directors want to have their own guy as the head coach. So I think that, in addition to the poor results of the last 12 months, should definitely have Greg Vanney on notice. As for what Toronto's ceiling is, if they get Pozuelo and they add a TAM-level winger, like maybe Lucas Jansen, who they had last year, someone roughly that caliber, and Josie stays healthy, and they make a good trade, because once they have Pozuelo, they will have too many central midfielders. If all those boxes are checked, you can talk me into this team coming home with 55, 60 points, which is a really good season. That is a lot of ifs, and based upon what I've seen of them defensively, they might need to score 65, 70 goals to collect those 55, 60 points. I think they have huge problems at the back.
And I know Josie just signed a contract extension, but if things did go very wrong this season and Ali Curtis is there and he just decides we're going to blow it up a little bit, we've got to change some things, is there a chance that we see either or both of Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley moving? Or do you think they're going to be with Toronto for at least this season?
I think Josie will be. I think Michael is there at least for this season. But I also think that Michael's going to be a very free agent, come next winter, and I'm not sure how much desire there will be to bring him back to Toronto, because Michael Bradley does a lot of things really, really well, but he's clearly lost 3 steps defensively, and you can't have your defensive midfielder being that kind of guy and making those kinds of non-plays at crucial moments like we saw all last year.
And if Michael Bradley is a free agent and he wants to play somewhere where he won't have to do as much defending, do you think there's a chance we see him playing for his father in Los Angeles?
I'm sure there's a chance. I don't know if that's what either guy wants.
I think that's what Daryl wants. That's why I asked that. That was his, like, one of his, not predictions, I think, but just a thing he would keep an eye on, is the idea of Michael eventually playing for Bob. It would be kind of interesting to see again. But
I mean, it would be full circle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They started, Michael started his career playing for Bob. So throw back to the old Metro Stars days.
While we are with LAFC, not with the Metro Stars, we'll stick with LAFC. I was mentioning yesterday that I feel like I tend to hear, like, pretty much, like, from people in the know, from people who cover U.S. soccer, or from former players, I tend to only hear positive things about Bob Bradley and what he kind of brings to the table as a coach. Where do you think he ranks in terms of the maybe strongest coaches in Major League Soccer right now?
I think that he's in the top tier. For sure. And, there are guys, try to get Jimmy Conrad on the show. There are guys who will tell you about some of the bad aspects of playing for Bob.
Yeah.
But his teams are almost always prepared. They play good soccer. I think he values the right kinds of players for the most part, and he's brave. What I've always liked about Bob is that he's brave. He sees a talented 16, 17, 18-year-old. He doesn't say, oh, somebody else has got to do the work. I'm more comfortable buying a player who's been created by somebody else. He sees a talent like that, and he wants to coach him. He wants to put him in positions to succeed or fail. Bob trusts his ability to do that, and that's what I've always, for sure, that's what I've always appreciated most about him as a head coach.
So he loses his assistant. Marc Dos Santos goes to Vancouver, is now the head coach there. Does that impact LAFC, do you think, this season? What was Marc Dos Santos doing for LA, for Bob Bradley, and how do you think he kind of moves to replace losing one of his assistants?
I think he's already made the hire. I forget who it is, but I mean, every assistant in every club on the planet has a different, maybe vastly different, maybe slightly different job than every other assistant in every club on the planet. So who knows what Marc Dos Santos was doing for LAFC. One thing from having watched Dos Santos' teams play a little bit over the last 5 years, I'm sure he did a very good job. And, that is, if LAFC struggle in some aspect of the game, that could be one of the underlying causes. But, this is the business. If you have talented assistants, you expect to have to replace talented assistants. I'm sure that LAFC. No, I'm sure that LAFC took that into consideration when they brought him on. I
mean, I agree with everything you said. I would just add, though, that, like, if you're looking at maybe ways to get around, like, never having to replace an assistant or not having to abide by the rules, you could just look across Los Angeles to the LA Galaxy, who seem to like to do things however they like to do things. How do you think they end up settling this, like, 4DP situation? And when do they have to have that issue settled? Is it, like, minutes before their first game? Or is there even a clock in place that says, like, you've got to have this settled by a certain time?
I don't know. I assume it's close of business tomorrow, because everything I've read has said that roster compliance date is March 1st. So that's it, right? And I can't. There are 23 other teams, 23 other ownership groups in MLS. I can't imagine they would let the Galaxy get away with having 4 actual DPs. And I know there's been a lot of talk this week. Oh, Dallas have 4 DPs. Orlando have 4 DPs. Yeah, but both those teams, 3 of them can be easily bought down with TAM and will be bought down with TAM. The Galaxy, as far as I understand the rule book, like, none of the guys they have on this roster can be bought down with TAM. And that means they got to, via trade or buyout, have to get rid of one of them.
It still seems like that will be Gio Dos Santos, from everything I've read and has been reported. How do you think they end up doing that? Is it just buying him out? Or is it maybe, like, I mean, if they do sit and wait, is there something in place, as far as you know, that, like, says, okay, now you all lose 10 points automatically? Or is it just sort of, like, is there a chance we see the Galaxy just see what happens if they do end up with 4 DPs? I
mean, I guess there's a chance of that, but I don't think so. I think it's they buy him out sometime we're recording this Thursday night. They buy him out sometime in the next 24 hours.
It also seemed strange to me that in all of these discussions about the Galaxy, do you really think they're going to start a draft pick as their number 10? Because that feels distinctly un-LA Galaxy.
Not just a draft pick, but a kid who wasn't even a full-time starter at SMU last year.
Interesting.
Yeah. It feels very un-LA Galaxy, but they like him. He has a good pedigree in terms of the program he played at and the teams that he came up with, the youth teams he came up with, and he's Argentinian-born Boca Juniors fan. So if you're Guillermo Barros Schelotto, you put that guy in the starting. It is weird. I admit it is really, really weird, but I have always operated under the assumption that there's a lot of unrealized and underappreciated talent in the U.S. And in Canada. And good coaches will find that, whether it's via homegrown, whether it's via the draft, or whether it's via USL, like someone like Mark Anthony Kaye. Isn't it just as ridiculous that a kid who looked like a USL lifer, which is Mark Anthony Kaye, came to LAFC and completely outplayed Andre Horta, who is a Portuguese youth national teamer, $10 million transfer fee, player of the month in Portugal, played off the field by Mark Anthony Kaye. So if that can happen, I truly believe that someone like Cuello can come in and start in MLS. And if he fits the role and understands the role and is put in a position where he could play to his potential, it's a great story. And it should be a surprise, but not like a gut level shock.
All right. Well, let's keep it West Coast. Let's move it a little bit north. I knew Diego Chara was good. I didn't know he was Portland is winless in 29 without him good. I learned that from your preview article. What is it that makes him so indispensable? What does he do for Portland that no one else could do?
I mean, some of it is luck because they have too much talent to be winless in 29 without him. But the big obvious thing is like he just makes the field so much smaller. Like he trying to play through the middle when Diego Chara's out there ball hawking it's got to be such a miserable experience for opposing teams. And I was able, at the MLS Cup, and obviously Atlanta won that one, but watching it we were behind one of the goals, watching it from that perspective, you got a real appreciation for just how much ground he can cover so quickly. And it was breathtaking. And having that in the middle makes everybody else on the field 5 or 10% better. And those margins matter a lot in a league that, until the last couple of years, has been a league of extreme parity.
So it seems like Portland have got the midfield sorted. They've got plenty of talent there. Should Portland fans be more concerned about the attack or the defense?
I think their attack's going to be fine. I've made no secret of the fact that I really like Jeremy Abobasi. I think that they were a lot better. They were a much better team when he was on the field last year. And when you have Valeri and Blanco as well out there, they're going to score plenty of goals. The defense is a concern. They were much better with Liam Ridgewell last year, the last 4 years, than they were without him, and he's gone. And there's no obvious replacement. Julio Cascante has gotten most of the minutes in preseason, and he has struggled. So I think that's a bigger concern, especially given that they play the first 3 months or so on the road.
So moving to Seattle. Seattle just wrapped up a winless preseason. They're historically slow starters, and I know Bobby, at least, is very, very concerned about Ozzie Alonso's departure. What do you think accounts for their struggles so far in the preseason?
I think that's a big part of it, for sure. They were, maybe on a point and a half, not even point and a half, point and a quarter per game pace last year without him. And then when he came back that second half of that season, there were other factors as well, but Ozzie Alonso, looking like prime Ozzie Alonso, was, in my opinion, the biggest. So having lost him, Chad Marshall still, I think, recovering a little bit and aging. Let's be fair. Mm-hmm. Jordan Morris recovering, and then the big one is like, this is just the Sounders. They don't play soccer until June at the earliest. So it's weird. It's bizarre. I know that Garth Lagerwey in Media Day said, hey, you know what? We are ready. Don't worry about any of this. We're going to come out of the gates looking to win games. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying those are just words, but like it never feels that way with the Sounders. It feels like they play, the first couple months in second gear.
I mean, I guess you can usually afford to do that. The playoff structure being changed maybe makes that like a more stressful thing for them this season. We shall see. But if it is stressful, if they do find themselves in trouble, they've got that third DP spot still open. Where do you think they should use it if they end up using it, which they most likely will? I don't necessarily mean like who should they buy, what player, give me a name. More so like what's an area you think they may end up looking to strengthen?
Well, I think it'll be either one of the wings. Because like maybe Jordan Morris isn't up for it, or maybe Victor Rodriguez isn't the guy he looked like down the stretch last year, or defensive midfield. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think Christian Roldan is a 6. I think he's an 8. And Gustav Svensson's a nice player, but he's getting up there a little bit, and he's like a nice player isn't what Ozzie Alonso was. Ozzie Alonso was literally the best defensive midfielder in MLS history. So I think if they decide they need to use that to go after to patch a hole rather than to get an asset, I think it's the good money is either on the wing or defensive midfield.
All right. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I have 2 more questions for you. Daryl and I have been excited about the possibility of Georgi Mihailovic running the show in Chicago. Now it sounds like we should maybe prepare ourselves for him running the number 8 spot and Bastian Schweinsteiger maybe playing as the center back. Does that sound about right to you?
I guess so. It is interesting with Gaetan coming in. They seem, they were already a pretty deep team in that front 6. Now they're a little bit deeper. I'm willing to, look, as long as he gets 2,000 minutes, I don't care what position it's at. I think long-term he probably is a better 10 than a better 8, but I haven't seen enough of him to say for sure, so as long as he's out there, I'm happy.
All right, one more for you. Who do you think eventually gets sold for like the next big fee? It does feel like MLS has moved into that sort of being a little bit more of a selling league. I'm wondering, like, maybe is it Jefferson Severino? Is it Wang and Bohm up in Vancouver? Or is it someone else I haven't thought of yet?
I think it's Albert Elise.
Okay.
And there was already interest in him from Fenerbahce. I think about $8 million is what they offered, and Houston wanted more, and our guy Sam Stejskal reported like watching Almiron do what he's done and Tyler Adams do what he's done was like a calculated risk that Houston took, like believing that those guys were really, really good and that MLS players undervalued on the global market, and that rather than selling at least for a nice profit in the January window, if they held on to him to summer, they would get even more. I don't expect Albert Elise, who's an excellent young player, I don't expect him to be in MLS past the summer window.
No, I think Daryl agrees with you as well. I think that was another one of his predictions for Houston, was that they might struggle to score goals in the second half because Albert Elise could be gone.
I think that's a very good prediction.
All right, well, there you go. I'll let him know. I'm sure he'll be pleased, and I'm sure he won't gloat about it for like a week. I know you got to jump because you've got games tonight, and then MLS right around the corner, the start of the season right around the corner. What does that look like for you, though? What is this weekend for you? Are you like back in the bunker watching every single game?
Yeah, back in the studio all day on Saturday. I think there's 11 straight hours of MLS games, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be there for all of it, but for a good chunk of it, we have our Matchday Central preview show on Saturday at noon Eastern. You can watch that on MLSsoccer.com, the MLS Twitter handle. I think it's maybe on our YouTube page, the usual places you could watch stuff. And then on Sunday, there are the 2 national TV games at 6 and 8. And then after that at 10:30, we're doing kind of our match of the day type thing, where at the end of the weekend, we have a half-hour show. It's me, Weeby, Bobby, Susanna, Kaylin. I think Charlie Davies is going to be in a bunch this year to wrap the games up and to break them down tactically. And somehow in between all that, I have to write my usual Sunday night weekend wrap-up column. So it's a busy weekend.
I was going to say, yeah, so I will take up no more of your time then, so at least you can have like a couple hours to yourself. But Matt, thanks so much for all that you do and for coming on the show.
Taylor, it's always fun to talk to you, man.
So thank you once again to Matt Doyle for coming on the program. As we said, he is very busy, stays very busy, and has a busy week ahead of him. So we definitely appreciate him taking the time to talk to me. But I wasn't done wanting to talk to people. So instead, I'm now talking to Daryl Grove. Hello, Daryl.
Hello, it's an honor to be on the Total Soccer Show in this unexpected way. I thought I had the day off.
Nope, you will never have the day off. I will always just call you randomly. At least I gave you a little bit of a heads up this time, though.
Yeah, you sure did. I guess my big question is, since this is an unscheduled appearance, do I get paid extra? Like a time and a half, double time situation?
In fact, you get no pay. That's how it is.
Oh, no.
Yes, yeah. It's a Skype clause in your contract. So sorry, buddy. If you would let me call your cell phone, if I just called your cell phone, then you would get extra pay.
I see, once there's a mic.
Yes, exactly.
Do I get to headline the show? Like, is it Daryl Grove with supporting act Matthew Doyle?
Something like that.
It's as in the exact opposite. Right?
Correct, exactly.
So obviously I haven't heard the interview, but I'm assuming it was good because Matt Doyle is always a superstar when he comes on TSS.
He's good. Yeah, he's always very good. He did a good job of it. I had some like kind of weird questions and a few out there questions that kind of asked of him to like be a GM for a moment. So he rolled with it. I appreciate his flexibility.
Don't give him too much power. He'll get carried away with it.
I will not. Don't worry. But one thing I did forget to ask him, I texted him about after the fact, was I wanted to ask him what's the week that he says, like, usually he can kind of start to know if a team is going to be good or bad, just because I wanted that for my own reference, but for listeners as well. He said usually it's after week 6, just in case people are wondering. After week 6 is when he feels like he has a better grasp of the teams that he's going to be watching, or has been watching, rather.
What, so you saying that wasn't in the interview, but was like off air or something?
Exactly. Yeah, it was like one of the questions I did not ask him, but meant to. I had I think 36 questions by the time I was done writing them all. So I think we got to about half of them, which is good for me.
And you know what? If anyone's wondering why have Taylor's interviews become so very, very good, I think preparation is the answer. Is that fair?
I would say so. Do you think doing, 4 hours of preview shows might have helped me get ready for that one? Possibly.
That was a lot of previewing, right? They can't expand MLS anymore. It'll be the end of us.
Yeah, or maybe we'll just be smarter and do 4 preview shows, which is what the extra time people did.
They did, right? They spread it out.
Yeah, so maybe we'll take that approach. But it's worth also noting why I'm calling you up as opposed to you being in studio.
Yeah. Okay, so I know we got a lot of stuff to talk about, right? There's going to be a Dollar Shave Club ad.
Ooh.
There's going to be an update on that Copa America offer that US Soccer made. There's going to be scouting. But there's also, I wanted to update listeners on the reason I was kind of off, at least this morning and this afternoon. Today was the first day of my chemotherapy, or chemo for short, as the cool kids call it.
As the cool kids call it, exactly.
Yeah. I asked all the cool kids in the chemotherapy center, and they said we all say chemo. And it was pretty smooth. I was a little nervous about it, but it was kind of a smooth experience. So I was in there for a couple of hours, about 4 or 5 hours altogether, and then they've sent me home with a portable chemo pack. So I've got this weird man purse type thing. I'm like Jerry Seinfeld. I got this man purse thing that I'm carrying that's got like a chemo infusion thing, so it's still running for the next couple of days. That's so good. No soccer for me for the next couple of days. Your first day of chemo present from me was going to be a giant fur for you to wear, so then you really could be Jerry from that episode. It's perfect. Let's do it. Is that in the budget? I don't know. We can find a way. I'm sure we can find a way. I'll go the Kramer route and get one from Bob Sacamano, and it will be made of rat. But it will be fine. That'll be fine. So Get me some marble rye. That's what I can do that. I want to ask you a sensitive question that may be about sensitivity. I don't know if you've had the opportunity yet, but we did have Sebastian Salazar on the show, and he did mention one thing that happens after chemo. Have you gone to the bathroom yet? Yes, and so far, so normal. Okay. But wait, he said after chemo, right? So bear in mind, I only got the infusion started at 9:30 a.m. this morning. We're talking around 7 p.m. It's 1 hour till Atlanta CONCACAF Champions League kickoff, by the way. That is how Daryl gauges time, by the way, in relation to Atlanta United kickoffs. Yes. I mean, there are lots of people who really do gauge time like that, like Jay and Kelly, when relegated. I'm sure they do. Yeah. So, I think maybe after the 3 days, you want to ask me that question. Okay. And I'm deliberately not going to ask Mr. Sebastian Salazar for any more information because I'm kind of looking forward to the surprise.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Well, he asked it so mischievously, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming it's not something really horrible. I'm assuming it's just something weird and possibly a little bit amusing. So I guess I'll update Total Soccer Show listeners on what happens.
All right. I look forward to that update, I think.
We'll have a not safe for work warning on that episode, maybe.
That works for me. How did you entertain yourself while you were sitting there having the chemo?
Honestly, I sent emails. I had some work emails to do, some Total Soccer Show admin stuff, and getting our Sunday team set up for the league. I just spent all the time getting those emails done, getting all my admin done. So
it was professional.
Oddly productive. Yeah.
All right. Well, I know that you got ready today utilizing the services or the products of today's sponsor. So should we talk about them?
Yes, today's sponsor is Dollar Shave Club. Dollar Shave Club, if you want to say it fast. If you're not into the whole brevity thing.
They have everything you need.
Excuse me, if you are.
If you are into it, there we go. If they have everything you need to look, feel, and smell your best, they can keep you fully stocked with products to cover or to deal with your hair, your skin, your face, you name it, they have it.
So there are starter kits where they send you, the basic stuff that you need to take care of your hair, your skin, or your face. Mm-hmm. And then the great thing is, as you use them, it's a subscription service. So a fresh box comes to replace the stuff that you've used. And that feeling you have when you run out of product, you will no longer feel that feeling because you will have fresh product delivered.
The shampoo anxiety I mentioned yesterday about running out of it because I don't want to because
I
like it so much. All right, that's
no more shampoo anxiety. No more razor anxiety. No more beard scrub anxiety. That can all be gone. All kinds of stuff, right? We talked about the box they sent us.
Yeah.
Chapstick, hair fiber. What's the stuff called? Brill cream.
Mm-hmm.
That cream that you put in your hair.
Yeah.
All of that stuff can be constantly re-upped as it comes to you. And as you hinted at, Taylor, I was very grateful of it last night and this morning. I genuinely was a little nervous about the chemotherapy because it was unexpected, right? I didn't know what was going to happen. And the thing I learned from you is look good, feel good, right? So rather than like walking in there all shabby, I decided I'm going to use that shampoo. I'm going to use that toothbrush more than usual. I'm going to give it a real proper scrub with that toothbrush and that toothpaste. I am going to do the beard prep scrub. I am now like on a run of, I want to say my best ever run of no ingrown hairs because of the prep scrub. No ingrown hairs in my beard. So yeah, Dollar Shave Club, genuinely, I'm not saying this just for the ad. I used it last night and this morning to get myself ready for this morning's challenge.
All right. And so if you're facing a maybe not as challenging morning as Daryl was facing, but if you're facing a challenging morning and you want to be prepared for it, Dollar Shave Club has you covered. And right now, they've got a bunch of those starter sets Daryl mentioned that you can try for just $5, like their oral care kit, which features the toothbrush that I'm in love with and the toothpaste that I very much enjoy. Yeah. After you use it, the restock box ships regular size products at regular price. So what are you out there listening to this waiting for? Get your starter set for just $5 right now at dollarshaveclub.com/TSS. That's dollarshaveclub.com/TSS.
And thank you, Dollar Shave Club, for sponsoring today's Total Soccer Show.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, maybe not to Common Bowl for saying no to Carlos Cordero. Yeah,
so if you heard the opening of yesterday's Total Soccer Show, the Western Conference preview, correct me if I'm wrong, it was, right? US Soccer, in a letter from Carlos Cordero, had made an offer to CONMEBOL, South American Federation, and CONCACAF to host an expanded Copa America in 2020 and promise everybody a bunch of money if they played in it. We all kind of thought that everybody would see the dollar signs and say yes, right? Apparently CONMEBOL, South American Federation.
That was the hesitation I had when I first introduced this. I started to say Copa America, and I was like, that's not right.
The trick is to just not be embarrassed and keep going.
There we go.
CONMEBOL have rejected the offer. They've said, this isn't good. From what I understand, from what I've read, it's because they feel like too much of the approximately $200 million that was promised to federations and teams, they think too much of that is going to CONCACAF, even though most of it is going to CONMEBOL. And then also the the obvious claim, but I think might be a bit of a bargaining chip, but is also accurate, is that the Copa America has 100 years of history. We're not prepared to just give it up and stop hosting it in South America. And they'd already got their own plan changes, right, to start hosting it in even numbered years. So they don't have a host. We talked about this yesterday, I think, but they do have a plan to have their own 2020 Copa America somewhere in South America.
Yeah. I mean, and it's worth noting, I think they also, in their rejection letter, noted that like no one had reached out to FIFA yet, and there was no way they were going to commit to a tournament without FIFA approval, because that can get you into some hot water. But again,
step by step, right? Yeah. First you sort of agree on the deal, then you approach FIFA. You don't approach FIFA for permission first before you've even got agreement in place. So I feel like that's a bit of a maybe just a negotiating tactic to make U.S. soccer's stance look a bit weaker.
It's possible, but it does feel like a thing where U.S. soccer could have reached out discreetly and said, like, hey, we're thinking about approaching FIFA about this. Is this a thing you might be interested in talking about? And at least then you have that level of kind of advance in the dialogue before you move to FIFA. But yeah, that did not happen, so that was one of their justifications.
A bit like my health insurance, where I have to get authorization for certain procedures.
Yes,
and
exactly.
then the doctor can go ahead with it knowing that they won't charge me directly.
Mm-hmm. So it does sound, though, like I like this analogy. This one worked better than whatever you were working on yesterday.
I've been doing my paperwork.
There we go. That makes more sense. So it sounds, though, like from the way you were describing it, that you think this tournament still happens, provided that maybe a little more money heads towards South America.
I think it's a possibility that this tournament still happens. I think maybe there's just still some negotiating or compromising to do. And actually, I came up with an idea that's mostly stealing an idea that you had yesterday,
all right,
which is for the United States to host an expanded Copa America with 6 CONCACAF teams or so, maybe once, but then also for then the tournament to rotate back to South American teams, and they host on say in 2024 or 2028. You know what I'm saying? But like then the United States and maybe Mexico gets in the rotation, but also it still is rotated amongst South American teams as well. And I think the thing that CONMEBOL would really like is for the US and Mexico to always accept the invitation, right? Because they would, I'm sure if you asked them, they would much rather, CONMEBOL would much rather have the 2 guest teams, which they always have to have, right? Because there's only 10 CONMEBOL teams. They have to invite 2 guest teams to make it a proper tournament, essentially. They'd much rather have be the United States and Mexico because the market's so big and because, they're local-ish. They're on the same larger continent at least than, say, Japan and Qatar, which is who they have this year. So maybe if US and Mexico guaranteed to always accept the invitation when the tournament was down in South America, that could be like a trade-off where they say, okay, in return for that, because then we make more money in TV rights and stuff, right? We'll also accept having it sometimes hosted in the United States. That idea is free. You can take it, CONMEBOL, CONCACAF, and US Soccer, no charge.
All right. They may well take you up on that, but I have another theory, which I've kind of come up with on the fly, because I like my random theories. I do wonder if there's a chance that, like, maybe, just maybe, like, this rejection letter is what CONMEBOL have to do at this juncture. As in, if you're a fan if you're in Peru and you're excited about Peru and you're excited about Copa America potentially one day being hosted in Peru or Bolivia or Brazil or wherever, like, if you're that fan, you're probably going to be pretty annoyed if suddenly it's announced that, like, yeah, every single Copa America is going to be in the United States from now on. Deal with it. Yeah. And so if you're CONMEBOL, you really do have to, like, reject that, and you have to give, like, maybe that reason that, like, oh no, it's the longest competition and it's has all this history, and so you kind of play to that element, and then you also, like, are publicly saying, but maybe if more money came our way, then it would work out, and maybe it is a thing where, like, then they hold out for another 100 million. And then they can say, like, well, I mean, we can't turn down 300 million. That'll help us buy so many fields and build so many fields. So I do wonder if maybe this is what they have to do now, but we end up having a tournament down the road with maybe a little bit more money and FIFA sanctioning as well. That would be ideal. Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that all sides kind of really want this to happen, but there've been so many little disagreements that it's this kind of bad blood. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to, and maybe it's hard to negotiate in a gentlemanly manner when there's already been some arguments behind the scenes about how it is all handled. And so maybe the result of that is, as you said, CONMEBOL sort of having to look strong and just outright reject this as opposed to opening a dialogue. Or, I mean, what I'm saying is, like, a little bit past that, in, like, maybe within that rejection letter that they sent, there was a secondary letter that said, "Hey, don't show this to the press." But we're still ready to talk. We just need a little bit more money.
Okay, this is kind of like how John Boehner was always saying terrible things about President Barack Obama when he was Speaker of the House, because he had to placate the Freedom Caucus, but behind the scenes they were actually like getting on like a house on fire.
So if your analogy from before was based on you filling out paperwork, why have you just utilized an analogy about John Boehner? What are you doing and who are you hanging out with?
I have no idea. Maybe one of the side effects of the chemo, which are yet to kick in, so we're about to get those.
You're worried about turning orange?
Is just remembering too much about John Boehner.
He was orange, right? I'm not making that up.
He had an odd tan.
Okay, all right. He had some interesting skin tone choices. That's how I'm going to put that one. All right. So we'll see what happens. I still think there's a chance we see the United States competing in some sort of a tournament in 2020. Likely if it happens on U.S. soil, but we shall see. I'm sure we'll have some updates between now and then.
Can I add one thing to this, just a piece of information that people might not know? Because I can't remember if we talked about this yesterday on air or off air. But one of the big things about Copa America switching to the 2020, the even-numbered years, is that the US and Mexico will be free to accept the invitation because there'll be no clash with the Gold Cup.
Right.
Now I'm hearing me say it out loud. I think I said it yesterday as well. But I think that's a really important part of this. Because it's even if the US doesn't end up hosting this thing, provided relations stay good enough, the US and Mexico can start regularly going to the Copa America, even if it's in South America and not in, Kansas City and Dallas and everywhere else in the United States.
Well, one thing we've learned in the reaction to our preview shows is that more Daryl Grove is always a good thing, according to our listeners. So I think you even saying the thing you said yesterday again, it's fine.
They're too kind.
They are. They really are. They're not really. It's deserved and appropriate. As is maybe getting back to scouting a little bit since it's been quite some time. We've got more than a few scouting reports still to get through, but we've got a couple for today. Should you be ready to do some scouting? Are you feeling prepared?
I am. I feel like this is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and normality is being restored because we're getting back to scouting.
No more improbability drive for us?
No more improbability drive of like 3 weeks of no scouting.
All right, well, let's get to it then. Let's start with Michael Lazar scouting Jordan Morris, the 24-year-old American attacker for the Seattle Sounders.
He's
almost
back.
A year to the day after suffering a devastating knee injury in a CONCACAF Champions League game, Morris returned to the field for Seattle, logged 30 minutes off the bench, and almost got an assist in a 2-0 preseason loss to Nacional of Uruguay. I'm guessing that is not an official MLS stat, almost assists. But even so, it's good to see Jordan Morris back on the field.
Moss back. Trevor Talbert is scouting Griffin Yao, the 17-year-old American forward for DC United. Trevor said Yao was given around 10 minutes in United's preseason win against the Tampa Bay Rowdies and then subbed on for Rooney in the 70th minute of a preseason friendly against the Philadelphia Union. It is unlikely that he will be given a first-team contract this season, but he looked like one of the better players in the United B team. So this is a guy that will play for Loudoun United.
Yeah, I would say that's a safe bet there.
I assume on loan, though. Isn't he a homegrown player? So that is actually, I guess I'm quibbling with Trevor here on the semantics. I think that is technically a first-team contract, but then you get loaned to Loudoun United.
We haven't done scouting in 3 weeks, and you want to quibble?
Yeah, I should back off, right? I should back off. My apologies to Trevor. I should just feel my way back in, right? Just much like Jordan Morris, just take it gentle, ease my way back in.
Sure. There we go. 30 minutes off the bench. Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Carolyn Akari scouting Kellen Acosta, the 23-year-old American midfielder for the Colorado Rapids. After the Rapids declined January offers from an English championship club, Acosta signed a new 3-year deal with Colorado. He'll average $800,000 per year, and the club has an option for an additional 2 years.
Lovely. Mm-hmm. I mean, they say that targeted allocation money, that TAM and GAM and everything else is fake money, but that's real money that Kellen Acosta can spend.
Yeah, I mean, and also that FC Cincinnati could not spend. Did you see that story today?
No. Oh, yes, vaguely, that they nearly signed someone
Wesley
good, but
Schneider.
but didn't have enough TAM.
There it is.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
Well, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure Cincinnati have time to rectify some things.
There's still a couple of days to go.
Yes.
Yeah. Next up, Todd Brannan. Todd Brannan is scouting Cameron Carter Vickers, CCV, the 21-year-old American defender on loan at Swansea from Tottenham. CCV played the full 90, Todd says, in Swansea's 4-1 win over Brentford in the 5th round of the FA Cup. The victory puts them through to the quarter-finals, where they will host Manchester City. It's only the 5th time in their history that the Swans have made the FA Cup quarter-finals.
And I think that may be where they end up in the quarterfinals. But we'll see. Shreyas Ramani scouting Dan Axel Zagadou, 19-year-old French defender for Borussia Dortmund. After missing 2 months with a foot injury, Zagadou returned for Dortmund's 3-0 loss to Tottenham in the Champions League. He's since played the full 90 in each of their subsequent games and got a goal in Dortmund's 3-2 win over Leverkusen when he tapped in a flicked-on header from Manuel Akanji.
Manuel Akanji! I always love a Manuel Akanji reference.
I know you do, buddy.
And actually, my favourite thing about watching Zagadou is that Akanji's also there. Grey Hair Gaming is scouting Indiana Vasilev, the 18-year-old American attacker for Aston Villa. Grey Hair Gaming says Indiana has broken into the U23s at Villa, starting 2 league games and a cup game since the start of February. So for my background information, he was previously with the U18s, right? So this is a promotion to the U23s. I also, did you hear the trepidation in my voice? I read the first 3 words, Indiana has broken.
Oh, yeah.
And I was very scared it was going to be a limb. But it wasn't. It was breaking into the U23s.
Luckily. I think this is a somewhat positive series of scouting reports. We'll see if it all plays out.
Are we on a roll of all positive so far?
I mean, I feel like you're jinxing things. Eric Edston scouting Callum Hudson-Odoi, 18-year-old English winger for Chelsea. Hudson-Odoi impressed with a goal in the Europa League against 10-man Malmo, and then got 40 minutes in the Carabao Cup final loss to Man City. With Sarri's job on the line, it won't be surprising if Callum continues to struggle to get consistent minutes this season.
How do we feel about Callum Hudson-Odoi? Is he future wing partner of Christian Pulisic, like he's on one wing and Pulisic's on the other, or is he future competition for Christian Pulisic? Like, is he maybe the next Jadon Sancho?
Or is he playing at Bayern Munich next season? We'll see.
That's also possible.
I mean, that seems like it's possible. That said, given the looming transfer ban, maybe if they have this summer, maybe they don't want to get rid of any assets. So maybe he sticks around, in which case I think that would put him as competition for Pulisic unless one of them switches sides.
All right. Next up, Todd Ito is scouting Takefusa Kubo, the player whose name is the most fun to say, the 17-year-old Japanese midfielder for FC Tokyo. Todd says Takefusa Kubo is back with FC Tokyo and started the first game of the J-League season, the Tamagawa Classico, against rivals Kawasaki Frontale. The match ended 0-0, and the Japan Times match report noted that, quote, Kubo impressed early with his improved physique, unquote, which is good to hear since Todd thinks his Kubo's small size, both height and strength, will likely be the main factor in how well he'll be able to adjust to the next level. Speaking of, it's also been reported that Kubo has agreed to return to Barcelona when he turns 18 this summer. Mm-hmm. Whoa, we buried the lead there, right?
Well, I think it was Todd sent a couple different reports in our scouting report absence. So it was kind of a combination of things.
So by we, I mean you.
Yes, exactly. Whatever. I just wanted to talk about his physique before we talk about going back to Barcelona.
I am firing shots in these scouting reports.
Yeah, you do what you do. Guy Jedwab scouting Serge Gnabry, the 23-year-old German wide forward for Bayern Munich. Serge Gnabry has had an exceptional few weeks. In the German Cup, he scored 2 goals against Hertha Berlin to force extra time, enabling an extra time winner and salvaging Bayern's Cup dreams. Then in Munich's 3-1 win over Schalke, Gnabry transformed an errant Robert Lewandowski overhead kick into a beautiful assist with a well-timed header. He did his work capably, but not outstandingly, says Guy, in their 0-0 draw with Liverpool.
All right, good stuff, mostly, from Serge Gnabry. Did you hear, just quickly off topic, did you see the rumour today? Definitely a rumour, and everybody who quote tweeted it said, I don't know about this source because it was a German website that I didn't recognise, suggesting that Schalke are in a bit of a debt problem, and they may be forced to sell Brill Embolo and Weston McKennie, basically some young assets that they may need to cash in on. That could be exciting if there's a Weston McKennie sort of transfer bidding war this summer. Yeah,
it does feel like we've seen those kind of rumors linking him to Liverpool, and now maybe you look at their books, you see some problems, and you think, okay, we can connect those dots further and make that seem like an even more solid link. That said, it does feel like maybe a move that is going to happen because maybe he's had enough time at Schalke. Maybe Liverpool come calling. It would be hard to turn that one down. Regardless, even if Weston McKennie wasn't a Liverpool fan, which he may well be, I still feel like Liverpool have that reputation. You gotta go.
I want to just float it out there. Has Weston McKennie considered the green pastures of Wolverhampton? Because, and I say this tongue mostly in cheek, but not all the way in. Wolves do have previous in terms of getting in there when clubs are desperate and buying way cheaper than they're supposed to. Like with Rui Patricio and Gianmartino, you know what I mean? They are not scared to take advantage of situations where other teams are in trouble.
They do not, but I like how you started that by making it sound like it was going to be has he considered Wolverhampton? Like it would be really good for him, and instead it's just about how they're super ruthless these days.
Up next, Dylan Viach is scouting Kai, the future Havertz, 19-year-old German midfielder for Bayer Leverkusen. Dylan says Kai Havertz played the full 90 in Leverkusen's 2-0 victory over Fortuna Dusseldorf. He scored the opener when he snuck in unmarked at the back post to poke home a cross from Kevin Volland. He then got an assist in Leverkusen's 3-2 loss to Dortmund. Overall, his 9 league goals are more than any team in Europe's top 5 leagues.
That'll work.
Kai Havertz, the best goal-scoring team in any of Europe's top 5 leagues. He doesn't even always play up front. Kai Havertz.
But he has let slip the goals of something. Let slip the goals of war. There it is. Got it.
Yeah, that definitely worked.
Yeah, I tried. Jeff Warren scouting Niklas Dorsch, 21-year-old German midfielder for FC Heidenheim. Dorsch scored the opener, a low rocket from the top of the 18, in a 2-2 draw with top-of-the-table Hamburg, keeping Heidenheim close to the leaders for promotion to the Bundesliga.
Wow, I'm not really familiar with Heidenheim, but they're up there. They're up there apparently. Daniel Pitcock is scouting Falarin Balogun, the 17-year-old English-American forward for Arsenal. Daniel says Falarin Balogun signed his first professional contract with Arsenal after a fantastic U18 Premier League campaign.
Get him capped.
I mean, they've tried. He's been playing both sides, right? Playing for English, then American, then English youth teams.
Gold Cup, get him capped. Matt Koss scouting Lucas Toussaint, the 21-year-old French midfielder for Lyon. Lyon became the first club in Ligue 1 to defeat PSG on February 3rd, this season, that is. Toussaint got 25 solid, mostly defensive minutes, and Matt was able to watch the match in Paris with his uncle, a passionate PSG fan, who cried as Matt secretly rejoiced.
Family reunions are the best. In America, you have Thanksgiving when you make your relatives cry. In France, it's watching Lyon beat PSG.
Evidently, it seems like a kind of like not a thing that necessarily needs to be cried about.
I mean, they can take a loss. Right?
I would think so. I feel like they've built themselves a pretty decent cushion there. I don't think they're in under any threat of a title challenge.
Oh, that's the end of the scout report.
It is.
All right. Well, thank you to Michael, Trevor, Carolyn, Todd, Shreyas, Greyhair, Eric, Todd, Guy, Dylan, Jeff, Daniel, and Matt for today's scouting reports.
Thank you as well to everyone else who has sent in scouting reports. We will eventually get caught up. We may have to do some abbreviated coverage of some of the reports and a few that are wildly out of date. Our fault, not yours. Maybe we may end up skipping over.
I think we may have to apologize to people who sent scouting reports while we were, basically thinly stretched when I was in hospital and could not do anything. I don't think there's any value for our listeners in hearing scouting reports from like late January.
Probably not.
In early March. So apologies if you sent in a scouting report and we didn't read it. I hope we've earned enough credit over the years that people know that we don't normally do that. It's just an extreme situation.
Yes, I would hope so. And I think they will, because our listeners are wonderful.
They sure are. If you would like to sign up for the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, it is one of the ways that we support the show. What we do is we ask you to go to totalsoccershow.com/join, and you'll see the options on that page. You can support the Total Soccer Show at $5, $10, $15, $20, or $25 a month. If you support at any level, $5 or more, we add you to the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, and we give you a young player to keep an eye on and send us reports about. Speaking of, over the last few weeks, a couple people have asked, hey, I'm waiting for my player. Can you please send me the name of my player to scout? Obviously, I was kind of, out for the count on a few occasions, so couldn't do it. I will be able to do it over the next few days. Like I said, catching up on admin. So if you sent an email over the last couple of weeks, I will definitely respond and get you your player. If you're waiting for your player, now's a good time to send an email and ask for your player. Don't bother Taylor. He's done a lot lately. Email Daryl, Daryl, at totalsoccershow.com. Let me know you're waiting for your player. I will get you your player.
All right, and you're going to have a few days.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Of course. You're going to have a few days to get caught up on those things. The expectation, right, is that you will maybe not be back until later on next week?
Yeah, so again, I mentioned this earlier, right? I feel good right now.
Mm-hmm.
You can probably tell by my voice, right? I'm feeling pretty lively. But I've been told that after the 3 days of chemo infusion is when the side effects kick in. And that could mean a lot of like nausea, vomiting, fatigue, all kinds of other stuff that maybe people don't want to hear about. So we won't mention it. But there's a chance that I'll be feeling not so good come like Monday, Tuesday. So I've preemptively asked Taylor, maybe give me the day off, at least Monday, just so I can sort of ride that out. It might be okay, but I'm sort of preemptively taking that day off. Hope that's okay.
Yeah, I think it will be just fine. Yeah, so the aim there is to have maybe we'll do 2 different weekend reviews. I should have someone with me to talk about the weekend's action in Europe, looking at maybe like Spurs Arsenal, Madrid Barcelona, Napoli Juve, lots of big games this weekend, and then maybe somebody on Monday or Tuesday as well to do some MLS coverage.
Excuse me, did you say Madrid Barcelona?
I sure did.
Is that in the league?
Yes, it is, I believe.
Yeah. All right. Well, my weekend plans just got something added to the calendar.
I mean, you've got Lazio Roma in there too. That's a big one. And you've got Everton Liverpool
it's not as tightly
in there as well.
Oh, that is tightly.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. That sounds great. And then MLS, because it's opening weekend, it's getting its own separate weekend review show by the sound of it.
That's the goal. Hopefully so. We'll see how it goes.
Okay. All right, Taylor, I'm glad that you are in charge of the content while I'm gone. It's a show that I can listen to. I love it.
Good. I'm glad. I appreciate that.
All right. I feel like it should be you closing the show because you've hosted the show.
Nah, you can close it. It's fine. I did the intro. You can do the closing.
All right. Well, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to make me work overtime today.
Of course. My pleasure, my friend.
Listeners, thank you for listening. And the Total Soccer Show will be back next week.